what is bad, and then having wisdom, which at the most basic level is the wisdom to be able to distinguish what is unwholesome, what is wholesome, and to be able to distinguish, to know, to understand what are the underlying motivations of unwholesome behavior and the basic motivations of wholesome behavior. So, for example, it would include the understanding of the 3 unwholesome roots of greed, hatred, and delusion, the 3 wholesome roots of generosity, kindness, wisdom, understanding what are the 10 ways of unwholesome karma, the 10 ways of wholesome karma. So it's from that fundamental, practical, ethical wisdom that the higher wisdom will emerge and develop. But in order for that higher wisdom to unfold successfully, it has to be grounded upon this fundamental, practical, ethical wisdom. Okay, so in this way we have the 7 good qualities that are represented by the good person, and those are contrasted with the 7 bad qualities which are possessed by the bad person. So, any questions on this point about any of these qualities? Okay, David? I'm sorry, we have Richard?
Yeah, I'm puzzled by the relationship between paragraph 15 and 16. That is, they're both are designated, they're 2 sets of 7 good qualities, but I'm not sure whether 16 is redefining or giving parallel terms for 15, which doesn't seem to be the case, because in 17 through 23, when they're described one by one, that relationship isn't borne out. That is, it's not parallel. Instead, there were sort of selections from 16 that are applied to the elements of 15.
Yeah, let me say that.
And so, what is the
15 is sort of, well, 15 is the counterpart to number 4. So 15 is laying out the outline, or we could almost call this the table of contents.
Yeah, 17 to 23. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But then exactly what is 16? Why are those 7 terms, also called good qualities, selected when their application in 17 to 18 seems erratic or arbitrary in some way? Whereas the systematic part is in 15. Just what is the list of 16? What is the connection between 16 and, for that matter, both either 15 or 17 to 23?
Okay, as I said, 15 is laying out a kind of table of contents or an outline of, there are 8 factors that are mentioned here. Now, one of these factors, the first one, is possessing the 7 good dhammas. Now, some of those good dhammas are going to enter into the exposition of the later criteria of the good person. But the 7 good dhammas is a separate set within itself.
Yeah.
And the criteria that determine the good man following the good qualities will be ways in which the good person, the true man, embodies goodness in the way he associates, the way he wills, counsels, and so forth. We'll see this because I'm going to continue now with the exposition. Yeah. So maybe it will become clear as we go along. Okay, so let's go now from the true man or good man possessed of good qualities. Then we have, how does the good person associate as a good person? In other words, what kind of person does a good person associate with? And so here the Buddha says, here the good person has for his friends and companions those ascetics and Brahmins who have faith, shame, fear of wrongdoing, who are learned, energetic, mindful, and wise. So here we have the 7 good qualities, but here they enter into a different role. So now they're not the qualities that the good person has within himself, but the good person, when he wants to associate with ascetics and Brahmins, perhaps this would be like the lay person, what kind of qualities is he going to look for in a spiritual teacher? Is he going to look for the teacher who drives around in a Mercedes-Benz or a Rolls-Royce and has lots of, dazed-eyed disciples looking at him and saying, sadhu, 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 and then he's charging, $1,000 to attend one of his retreats and living on a beautiful island that they've bought and surrounding himself with beautiful young women, and then keeping flasks of Johnny Walker Black whiskey. Is there such a thing, or am I? Or is it going to be a person who has these qualities? So the good person, when he associates, he's going to associate with the person who has the good qualities. So he'll look at the various spiritual teachers and then try to find the spiritual teachers who have these good qualities. And I think the Buddha mentions this here because in many other suttas, the Buddha emphasizes the importance of establishing right association. So we have even at the beginning of the Mangala Sutta, Sevanacha bhalanang panditanancha sevana pujacha pujaniyanang etang mangalamuttamang. So one avoids associating with foolish people, one associates with the wise, one honors those who are worthy of honor. And then we have the famous teaching of the Buddha on where Ananda comes to the Buddha and says, so far as I understand, the spiritual life, 1/2 of the spiritual life is noble friendship. Then the Buddha says, don't say that, Ananda, don't say that. It's not 1/2 of the spiritual life, but the entirety of the spiritual life depends on noble friendship. And what is the reason for that? It's through noble friendship that one learns to develop, in that sutta, all of the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, up to right concentration. So if you're going to get good guidance, reliable guidance, you have to associate with those who embody and represent good qualities in themselves. And so that will serve to reinforce one's own good qualities and help one to bring one's own good qualities, to develop them and bring them up to the peak of perfection. Or at least if not to the peak of perfection, at least to make them stronger than they are at present. Okay, so next we come to, from associating as a good person, then we come to willing, or it can be thinking as a good person. The word here is sapurisa chinti. So the word chinti has both the 2 nuances, the nuance of the way one thinks and the way one wills or forms volition. So the text says, here a good person does not will for his own affliction, for the affliction of others, or for the affliction of both. And this is contrasted with that of the bad person, in paragraph 7 at the bottom of 892, how does the bad person will? The bad person wills for his own affliction, for the affliction of others, for the affliction of both. It might be taken as a point for discussion. Okay, it says here that the good person does not will for his own affliction, for the affliction of others, or for the affliction of both. But why couldn't the text express itself more positively? Why not say that the good person wills for his own welfare, the welfare of others, or the welfare of both? Any thoughts about this? It could be expressed just as easily, just as economically. What is your name? Phil. Okay, yeah. If you put them, did you get the microphone? Okay.
Perhaps because the sense of self at this point is not willing. It's more harmlessness. There's not a sense of ego willing. It's more of not doing, of none to do.
Okay, that's possible. Anybody else have any ideas? Okay, Bo Wei has some idea. Please.
Because more often than not, many afflictions are caused, are done in the name of benefiting others.
Oh, that's a very good suggestion. Yeah. Often people think that they're benefiting others and then they're just imposing their own ideas on others about what should be done for the good of others. Maybe we take like the paradigm of this would be, say, the Soviet Union under Stalin. You know, we're going to have the 5-year economic plan, and so we eliminate all of the private farms, and we have the communal farms. Then we have to get rid of certain population groups which are bad for the development of the country. And then we have the development of China under Mao Zedong. They all think that they're doing good, but they're doing what is harmful. Any other ideas? Okay, Jim?
The wealthy may cause the people to attach to it and grasp on it. But affliction is kind of to reject it eventually.
Okay, that's possible too. Yeah. I don't have like one definite answer in mind. I'm not like testing you to find out, you know, are they going to get it right, right or wrong? Just to see what ideas. Please. You can stand up. So.
It might mean that it defines a bigger set. You know, like in mathematics, you know, you have true and not true. So not true involves a bigger set than just simply say false.
Oh, that's actually a very interesting point.
So it might include, say, like Pachika Buddha, who attain enlightenment for themselves, but not necessarily, you know, helping others. So.
Okay, we'll take Richard, and I will give my idea, which has to be the right one.
Well, I'm wondering, what's the relationship between will and mental formations? You know, that is he treating will this way because in other contexts he uses will as something essentially negative?
No, I don't think the Buddha ever uses will itself as essentially negative.
Oh, okay. Well, what's the word for will, and what's the word for mental formation? Okay,
here in this passage, the word that's used is chinti. Where's my... So here the word is chinti. It's being used as a suffix, sappurisa chinti. And now there's a root, a verbal root, chit, from which we get many other words. We get chitta, which is a state of mind. We get chaitana. Chaitana is the word that normally means volition. Then from chit we also get chinta, which means something like a thought in the sense of a reflection. And these are all different. The word that's translated as mental formations, the fourth aggregate is, of course, sankhara. But when the Buddha explains the aggregate of mental formations or sankhara, he usually does it in terms of chaitana, volition. So that's why I've been translating sankhara khandha as the aggregate of volitional formations or volitional activities.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take Katie.
I just wanted to ask if you at one point would speak to this point here, which is basically the cataphatic and the apophatic argument. Wait, I know, and this is practical, sir, Bhante, because there's a sutta, and it might be Vacchagotta, where the Buddha speaks specifically about he's aware of the trap that the teacher who speaks in this is not non-happiness, this is not non-self, the sort of broad set that would include more through what something is not non. And I think that is, at some point, a person will come to that way of thinking in this study of, I think it has a real practical benefit, and so I'm asking you to consider that if at some point, sir, to speak to that.
I think my understanding corresponds to, what is your name again?
Hong?
Hong. To what he said, without using the mathematical terminology. But I think the basic reason is that, first of all, the Buddha sometimes has to function on restraining, or at least in his teaching, he has to enjoin restraining and preventing what's unwholesome in order to sort of clear the field for the wholesome. And so, if a person is habituated to willing or to forming purposes that it will be harmful to himself, harmful to others, harmful to both, sort of the first step in developing a good attitude is to restrain those volitions which are harmful to oneself, harmful to others, harmful to both. Then once one is able to recognize one's volitions and to restrain the unwholesome, then one can develop the wholesome. Another explanation that's possible is simply that often an Indian style of expression is to use negative terms for ideas that actually in practice have a positive content. For example, when we speak about the three wholesome roots, the kusala mula, what are they but alobha, adosa, amoha, non-greed, non-aversion, non-delusion. But, well, in a sense, non-greed has quite a broad range, so it can include qualities ranging from generosity through service to others to renunciation, being able to give up the objects of attachment. And non-hatred, non-aversion, like a positive manifestation of it is loving kindness, but a person who has non-aversion doesn't necessarily go around all the time, may you be well and happy, may you be well and happy. But the important task is to control anger, resentment, hatred. But always when they explain what is meant by non-delusion, the text always equate it with panya, with wisdom. Anyway, we do find texts which speak about that a good person wills for sukhahita, the welfare and happiness of himself, the welfare and happiness of others, the welfare and happiness of both. So there are, both kinds of texts. But I think at the outset, the fundamental task is to begin one's training by restraining the impulses to harm others, to do things that are harmful to oneself, to do things that are harmful to both. Okay, let's continue. Okay, this is a rather unusual passage here, that we have the good, how does the good man or good person counsel as a good person? And here, the good person does not counsel or give advice to others for his own affliction, for the affliction of others, or for the affliction of both. That is how a good person counsels as a good person. I'm trying to see how this works in actual practice. Somebody comes to me for advice and says, you know, I'm having some trouble with my wife, or I don't want to get into marital issues. I'm having some trouble with my children. I want them to I want my son to be a doctor, but he wants to study political science or philosophy. So what should I do? What can I do to get him to go on and study medicine? So I have to give him some advice. How do I go about doing this? A way that won't lead to my own affliction, to the affliction of others, or the affliction of both. The mother, or usually it's the mother, especially in Jewish families. I want my son to be a doctor. You know, I won't be able to live with myself if he doesn't become a doctor. And he wants to study philosophy. What can he do with it? How do I advise him? Do we have any philosophy majors here? I see at least two of them. Three of us. I don't have a mirror. Three of us, yeah. Again, why not advise for the benefit of oneself, for the benefit of others, for the benefit of both? Anyway, let's move on so we could finish the sutta today. But this is rather unusual because I don't know of many suttas where the Buddha teaches disciples how they should give advice to others. And here we come to how does one speak as a good person. And this is the basic training in right speech that we find in the Noble Eightfold Path as well as in the 10 courses of wholesome action. So the good person abstains from false speech, from malicious speech, or this is actually divisive speech, speech that creates divisions between people, from harsh speech, and from gossip or idle chatter. And this brings up the interesting point that here we have advice on speech formulated, when it's formulated as a set of rules like this, it's formulated negatively, abstaining from this, abstaining from that. But there are corresponding passages where the Buddha elaborates on these, and then we see in the elaboration that he explains them in positive terms. For example, in Sutta number 27, this would be like on page 273. So he's describing the training of a monastic disciple. He says, abandoning false speech, he abstains from false speech. He speaks truth, adheres to truth, is trustworthy and reliable, no deceiver of the world. And then abandoning malicious speech, he abstains from malicious speech. Then it continues, thus he is one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of friendships, who enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights in concord, one who speaks words that promote concord. Then the third one, abandoning harsh speech, he abstains from harsh speech. He speaks words that are gentle, pleasing to the ear, and lovable, words that go to the heart, courteous, desired, and agreeable to many. Then abandoning gossip, he speaks at the right time, speaks what is fact, speaks on what is good, speaks on Dhamma and discipline, speaks words that are worth recording, reasonable, moderate, and beneficial. So when we have negative formulations, we should understand that they have to be taken together with the positive counterparts. Okay, and similarly with how does the true or good person act as a good person? So here the reference is to bodily action. And so the good person abstains from killing living beings, taking what is not given, and from misconduct and sensual pleasures. And then also if you go back and look at page 272, then you get the positive counterparts to these. So not only does the person in training abstain from killing living beings, but he lives conscientious and merciful, compassionate to all living beings. And so he abstains from taking what is not given. In this case, he abides in purity, or actually I think honesty would be a better rendering here. And here, because the Buddha is speaking with reference to the monk in training, he says, abandoning in celibacy, he observes celibacy, living apart, abstaining from sexual intercourse. Okay, so this takes care of, we say that this is the component of right speech and right bodily action. And now we have the basic or fundamental right view. So how does the true man or the good person hold views as a good person, or the views of a good person? And here the good person holds such a view as this. Okay, there is what is given and what is offered and what is sacrificed. Again, this requires some explanation. So, because it's just an objective fact that if something is given, it's given. But the underlying understanding here is that one practices giving, charity, generosity. One is in some way creating some merits which are going to come back and bring some personal benefit. That there's some kind of moral value in the act of giving, which is connected with the law of karma. And so this is naturally followed by that there is fruit and result of good and bad actions, that there is this world and the other world. Of course, no one could deny that there is this world, but the point here is that part of right view is accepting that there are other realms of existence beyond this realm in which we're living. And from the perspective of beings in the other realms of existence, this realm exists as a possibility of rebirth. That there is mother and father. Of course, nobody is going to be denying that there are mothers and fathers, but the point here is that what's being affirmed is that there is an obligation to serve one's mother and father, or that one has a responsibility to look after one's mother and father, that there are certain objective duties which are incumbent upon one in looking after, taking care of one's mother and father. There are beings who are reborn spontaneously. I mean, this is one of the modes of rebirth, according to the Buddhist teachings, that there are different ways in which beings are reborn, and in certain planes of existence, beings come into existence spontaneously, without parents, but they just arise, I guess, through the projective force of karma. When they pass away, say, from the human realm, if they're destined to be reborn in the heavenly realms, then just through the force of the karma, they just arise or spring up into existence, rather than through the sexual union of parents. And I think in the lower realms, the hell realms, beings are reborn spontaneously there. So I wonder if somebody is skeptical of the existence of beings who are spontaneously reborn, does that mean they have a wrong view? Okay, and then there is the part of right view is the belief that there are good and virtuous ascetics and Brahmins in the world who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge the nature of this world and the world beyond, and declare them to others. And so probably this aspect of right view involves accepting that when virtuous ascetics and Brahmins declare that they've understood at a deep level the nature of this world and the existence of worlds beyond this present one, and speak about, for example, the way of existence in those worlds, the courses of conduct that lead to existence in those worlds, then one has some kind of trust in them. So all of these are considered aspects of right view, and this is spoken of sometimes as in the text as the mundane right view, which is the forerunner or precondition for the super-mundane, world-transcending right view. And to see sort of the significance of this right view in the Buddhist path, one could contrast it with what's taken to be the wrong view, the mundane wrong view. And this is found on the previous page, 893, paragraph 11, so that the bad person holds the view that there is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed. So the bad person is saying that there's no point in giving, no point in making offerings, no point in charity. You know, when you die, that's the end, everything is finished at death. They take the body to the cremation ground, burn it, and all that remains are ashes. Whether you are a generous person or a miser, a so-called fool or a wise person, at death, everybody is just wiped out and eliminated. So no point in doing anything good like practicing generosity. So then there's no fruit or result of good or bad deeds, no worlds beyond the present one, no life beyond the present one into which one can be reborn, no use looking after your mother and father, let them look after themselves. No beings who are reborn spontaneously. And those so-called good and virtuous ascetics and Brahmins in the world who are speaking about the nature of the world and the world beyond, they're just hucksters out to make an easy living. What they're saying, a lot of humbug. You know, don't believe it. You know, why don't they go out and get a decent job instead of just sitting comfortably in their monasteries and their temples? You know, they get a good solid meal every day. People come to them and say, "Do you need anything, Venerable One?" So they're just parasites living on the back of society, on the back of you. You people are working, going out, hard work, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And these guys are just sitting in their rooms, they just think they're being holy. Then they get up all sanctimonious and say, "You should do good deeds, you should make offerings to the Sangha." So don't believe them. Okay, so those are considered aspects of wrong view. And let's just finish up, then we'll have lunch, and then we could have questions and discussion after the lunch break. Okay, so then we have, how does the true or the good person give gifts as a good person? So the good person gives a gift carefully, or sakkachang, also this could be rendered respectfully, gives it with his own hand. So this is, it's considered like the mark of, like the aristocrat will tell the servant, "You give the gift." But for a good person should be willing to give the gift with his own hand, because that shows some humility. So he gives it showing respect. Actually, this is somewhat similar to the first one. He gives a valuable gift. So not, keeping the valuable items for himself and then just giving, if he has something which is sort of worn out, beaten up, and he was thinking, maybe tomorrow I'm going to throw this, when the garbage collection comes, I'm going to throw this out. And then somebody comes and says, "Do you have an extra toothbrush?" Or and so he thinks, I don't have to throw this out, but I just give this to him. And he gives with the view that something will come of it. Maybe some people will find this a little disturbing. Isn't this sort of like a little bit like you're thinking, well, when I give something, is it going to be a good investment? Am I going to get good returns on it? Like if I invest in the stock market, am I going to get some good dividends on that investment? So when I make a gift, am I going to get some good returns on it, some good karma that's going to come? So, yeah. David? Yeah. I think the way it's intended, if I understand it, with the view that something will come of it. Yeah, I didn't look at the Pali for this. But I think the idea is that there is going to be some benefit coming back to oneself. And I'll just explain the way I understand this. That there's a difference between giving with the view that something will come of it, which means recognizing that the law of cause and effect is working objectively, and giving with the desire to get something in return. And I would say that giving with the desire to get something in return is giving with some degree of greed associated with the act of giving. So in that case, one is seeking one's own benefit. Giving with the view that something will come of it is giving with the recognition that the gift does create the wholesome karma, which will come back in some way beneficial to myself. But at the same time that one is giving, one should be detaching oneself from the desire for that benefit. So there is also a certain degree, I would say, in which when we give or do other wholesome actions, I'd say it's justifiable in wishing to have good results come from it. Not in the sense that I give because I want to become a multimillionaire, or I praise others because I want there's a karmic result to be praised in return, or I observe precepts because by doing so I'm going to be free from illness and have a long lifespan. Well, maybe that's a justifiable reason. Okay, but I'd say as a person who's a human being now, I want to come back into the human realm, or maybe some people want to have a rebirth in a heavenly realm, in order to have the opportunity to continue to practice the Dharma. I want to generate enough merit so that I'll come into contact with the Dharma early in my life, and have good conditions for practicing, so that I'll be free from illness. Like right now, like I have a chronic head pain condition, which is a big obstacle to my practice. And so maybe this is the result of some bad karma, and I don't want to get it to, if I were to learn that as a result of some karmic deed that I did in the past, I'm going to have to endure this headache for 7 lives in the future. I'll throw up my hands and think, oh, what misery. Is there something I can do, some kind of really powerful, wholesome karma that will counteract that, so that at least in my next life I won't have this head pain? So there seems justifiable reasons for wishing to have good results from good deeds. So it's not all just, calculating from a rather egoistic and narrow, selfish point of view. And also, when we have good conditions for ourselves, then we can benefit others more effectively. So I might, in giving, want to become wealthy myself, not so that I can have a mansion and 5 cars, but if I'm wealthy, well off, then I can do more deeds that will be of true benefit to others.